This is your label, the single most important driver of packaging brand experience, making people fall in love with your product, recognize and return to it. But your packaging label is also a change agent, capable of transforming the sustainability of your product and how millions of people consume worldwide. The world needs more sustainable packaging solutions, and every choice matters. Multiply it by millions worldwide, and the impact is massive, global. Solution 1. Make the switch. Start the change by switching to more sustainable label materials. Switch to reduce, switch to recycled, and switch to renewable alternatives. Solution 2. Close the loop. The future of packaging is circular. Close the packaging materials loop, enable recycling, and promote reuse. The future is sustainable labels in sustainable products, driving sustainable consumption. And the future is now. Be the change maker. Make the switch, close the loop. UPM Raflatac. Labeling a smarter future beyond fossils.
Warm welcome, everyone, to our webinar on navigating the PPWR transformation, packaging, plastic packaging recyclability, and labeling impacts. My name is Sylvia Juris, and I have a pleasure to represent Paper Laminates business unit in the EMEA region of UPM Raflatac. The purpose of today's session is to explore significant changes brought by the packaging and packaging waste regulation to the plastic packaging and provide you with some valuable insights and tools on navigating through the changing environment. I'm excited to introduce our esteemed speakers, Bob Taylor, UPM Raflatac Sustainability Director.
Hi, Sylvia, nice to be here.
And our guest speaker, Jean-Emile Potaufeux, representing Plastic Recyclers Europe.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation.
Good morning. So, one practical topic before we get started. There is an opportunity to ask questions throughout the whole session. So please feel free to do so using the chat functionality. And we will secure time towards the end of the session to give answers to those questions. Good. Let's then get started by discussing why is it crucial to act now, and let's look at it from the perspective of 3 dimensions. Firstly, the packaging waste that has been increasing significantly over the past years and is expected to grow by further 19% in 2030 perspective when it comes to packaging waste in general, and as much as 46% when it comes to plastic packaging waste, if no action is taken against. Secondly, carbon footprint that is generated by the packaging waste. And lastly, soil and land pollution, where packaging waste plays a substantial role. With this increasing environmental impact of the packaging waste, new regulations have been formulated and are still being formulated, and all the players, all the actors in the value chain are learning how to best respond to those changes and ultimately how to comply. Bob, can you tell us a little bit more about the background of PPWR?
Sure. Let's do so. And I think PPWR is a manifestation of actually a long journey inside the European Union, where it aims to make sustainable products the norm. We see that framed through strategic initiatives like the EU Green Deal. We have the Circular Economy Action Plan and things like climate law. And ultimately, the ambition for Europe is to be the first climate neutral continent, but also what it wants to do is decouple growth from the use of natural resources, and of course to reduce environmental impact. And we see that coming through things, multiple different legislations which are very concrete, things like Single-Use Plastics Directive. We have Corporate Social Responsibility Directive, reporting directives. We have EUDR on the go, so this is the deforestation regulation. And PPWR is one of those. And when we think about PPWR, its overall aim, of course, is to promote circularity and recyclability connected to packaging. If we think about the aims, first of all, we want to prevent packaging waste. We want to boost recycling. If you think the predecessor, so the Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive, it set a high level ambition, but the Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation takes it to a completely new level. And of course, what it also needs to do is generate the interest in markets for secondary raw materials. This is important to create the pull-through for recycled content. And ultimately, which is good for all of us, is that we create a platform for harmonization throughout the whole market. And it's really important for all of us to remember, whether we're brands, packaging designers, or converters like we, that the scope means that it's all packaging that's going onto the market in the EU.
All right, and the reason why we talk about it now is because European legislation has entered its critical phase. So can we, Bob, look a little bit closer into the timeline and key components of the PPWR?
We can do that for sure, yes. And I think it's really important that we all realise that these new packaging rules are actually almost here. The legislative process for PPWR began at the end of 2022, but in spring this year, this is where we had the first proposals signed off, and I have understood from my public affairs colleagues that this was the most lobbied process in European history, and I think that is the indicator for us of just how critical a piece of legislation this is for us. And if all goes to plan, the different language versions, the texts will be approved hopefully in Q4 this year. And then we will have, towards the end of the year, entry into force. And again, this is really important for us to understand, because when it comes the entry into force, we have 18 months before the regulation is applied. And when it comes to labels, of course, the focus of this webinar is about recyclability. But there are multiple elements in the PPWR which are relevant for labels. If we think about recycled content, there will be different targets set according to different packaging types. There will be EPR fees set according to your recyclability grade and your recyclability content. Bio-based content will be part of the story. It's not clear yet how, but we have to think about that going forward. Compostability. There's a lot of fruit and vegetable direct labelling at the moment, and those labels in future will have to be industrially compostable. And then reuse and refill is also on the agenda. The HoReCa industry, so hotels, restaurants and catering, they really have to think about now how they're going to build reuse and refill systems for up to 10% of their output by 2030. But I think it's also really important that we think about all of this and we think about partners in the value chain like RecyClass we can work together to understand this better.
Yes, exactly. And when exactly talking about recyclability, let's move to RecyClass being a key player in the plastic packaging recycling landscape. So Jean-Emile, if I may ask you to explain the role of RecyClass in influencing and implementing those standards.
Yes, sure, Sylvia, but maybe first I should present what RecyClass is in case some of the audience would not know. So RecyClass is a non-profit cross-industry initiative advancing plastic packaging recyclability and the transparent use of recycled content. And there, of course, the objective at the end is to make plastic circular. But regarding recyclability, RecyClass today, in RecyClass, we can count on the support of the full value chain and the technical expertise of our members. as you understood, promoting or encouraging the recyclability of or the development of recyclable packaging today is a vision that is shared by RecyClass and the packaging waste regulation. And actually, it was in this context that there was these European standardization groups that were created, such as the CEN TC261 Working Group 10, that is working on delivering 14 different standards for plastic packaging recyclability by 2025. If we look to how these 14 different standards are set, there we can see that we have one standard on methodology, 6 on design for recycling guidelines. So there we will see one for PET bottle, one for PET other than rigids, meaning trays and blisters, for instance. Then 2 on PE and PP rigids and flexibles, then PS and EPS packaging. And in parallel to this, we can see 7 standards on recyclability evaluation protocols, so 6 that will be the direct link to the design for recycling guidelines I mentioned before, and an additional one that will be on sorting only. What is quite interesting, though, is to see that currently there are equivalent documents already available via RecyClass platform. And these documents are free access and were developed based on scientific-based information. Now, to answer your question, Sylvia, about how RecyClass is, is influencing the development of these standards, I should there emphasize that RecyClass is not having any advocacy purposes, but only is a technical approach that is here to generate more data and knowledge to be used by the industry in the future to develop more sustainable solutions. And actually on this, I would like to present how RecyClass works, because from the very beginning, RecyClass decided to develop recyclability evaluation protocols that would be here to ensure that everyone would be talking the same language when talking about recyclability, and that everyone would be evaluating recyclability based on the same rules. And so here we developed recyclability evaluation protocols that are here to mirror what is done at industrial scale in a recycling plant, and to ensure that a packaging can go from a bottle to a bottle or film to film application. So they are ready to cover closed loop applications. Based on these findings, we developed design for recycling guidelines that are fed with the new data that we are generating. So there you are probably familiar with these traffic light color tables, where in green you will find all the best design you can have. In orange, what we consider limited compatible, meaning that these are features that are still compatible with circularity, but that are more here as second choice, I should say. And then in red, everything that we will consider as low or non-compatible with recycling. If you design your packaging correctly today, and that you have all the features of your packaging in the green or in the orange section of the guidelines, then you can go for a recyclability certification, first through a self-assessment on our online tool, but then also through a third-party certification, which will allow you then to claim the recyclability of your pack.
Very clear. Thank you. So now, if we look at some challenges and opportunities in the packaging recycling under the PPWR, we receive lots of questions on that topic from the value chain. What would be your views as experts on that? And would you say, is it possible to future-proof packaging practices? Bob, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question, and absolutely we can future-proof our approach. You know, I think it's really important to follow the development of the design for recycling guidelines. There's a lot going to still happen over the next 2 or 3 years. We need to participate in this process where it's relevant to the packaging types that we're all working with. We need to understand the timelines. There are going to be open questions that need expert contributions, and of course, coming back to this question of collaboration in the value chain, for all of us, that's going to be really important. Yeah.
Jean-Emile, what about you?
I totally agree. Yeah, I can only agree with what Bob said. Actually, collaboration through the whole value chain is what will make us progress as fast as we could. So they are actually, this is exactly the RecyClass approach, as currently we have more than 115 members representing the full value chain. So as you can see, from raw material producers through brands and through converters. There, of course, UPM Raflatac is one of our members, but I would like to insist also on the role that brands and retailers can have in this business, as they will be the one putting the packaging on the market at the end. They are the ones that can really have the power to impose using recyclable solutions. So there they can really make the push to their suppliers. And actually on these, RecyClass already developed recyclability certifications that are not only valid for brands and retailers, but that are also valid for converters that would like to show to their clients that their solutions are recyclable as such.
That's a very powerful picture, many great brands, many great collaborations. If we take an example of any international brand, what would be then the concrete steps to follow?
Well, I think for any brand, I think it's really important to remember that all of your packaging that you're going to place on the market in Europe is going to have to be recyclable. And there is a two-step approach, of course, to this. We've mentioned design for recycling guidelines already, and those packaging types that you put on the market must meet the DFR criteria and gain so-called A to C recyclability grades. And we're going to come back to Jean-Emile in a minute to explain from a RecyClass perspective what that means in practice. But it's important to remember that the design for recycling guidelines need to be in place by January the 1st, 2028. And at that point, we will see the concrete rules that we have to abide by. So we need to pay attention, we need to participate, and obviously, from a perspective of labels, that's important for us. The second part is making sure that your packaging is recyclable at scale. And that means basically that it's collected, it's sorted, and it's recycled into the right streams. And the aim is that by the 1st of January 2030, the rules for recycling at scale are in place and then applied from 2035 onwards. And it's interesting to note that even if you get recyclability grade C, that's going to be banned from the market around 2038. But I think maybe it's good to hand over to Jean-Emile to explain a bit more about the recyclability grades.
Yes, let's do so.
Yes, sure. And there, indeed, some of you may be familiar with the recyclability classes that are developed or were developed by RecyClass in the past. So currently, we are still on this A to F class ranking that some of you may consider as quite different compared to the A to C class ranking proposed by the PPWR. But actually, if you look a bit deeper on the comparison there, what you can see is that in RecyClass, the class D, E, and F are actually something where you cannot claim the recyclability or the compatibility with circularity of your packaging. So basically, according to the PPWR, that would be something corresponding to what will not be allowed on the market by 2030. So if we focus then more on the class A, B, or C, there you will see that the recyclability per unit is fitting quite well, actually, the monomaterial content that is required by RecyClass to get the class A, B, and C respectively. Now, the big question, of course, is how this recyclability per unit will be defined by the Commission. And so on this, European methodology still needs to be set. So on that, we know that the Commission can count on the RecyClass methodology already available, at least for a baseline. Then, as Bob mentioned, there is not only recyclability, but also the recycled plastic content that will be mandatory by 2030. And so there you can see that depending on the nature of your packaging, and by 2030 and by 2040, you will need to have a certain amount of recycled content in your packaging. So there, I think it's really emphasizing the fact that if we want to succeed in these targets, then we need to improve the quality of the PCR, meaning that we need to improve the recyclability of the packaging. And because we cannot wait for 2030 to act, there RecyClass will continue to update. It's designed for recycling guidelines based on test campaigns and scientific findings. So there you will for sure see new recommendations, for instance, on labels, on adhesive, but also on other features that will be based on the work we did in the past months, and that will continue to be aligned with the state of the art of the recycling processes. So on this, I would like just to announce that also there in 3 weeks about from now, there will be an update of our guidelines.
That sounds exciting. So everything that we are talking about here that holds true for the European brands. What about global brands that have a coverage beyond Europe, knowing that PPWR is actually the regulation that is valid for European continent?
Yeah, so on this, I believe harmonization is key. And from our perspective, this harmonization must be based on scientific-based information. So we believe this is the only way to give a credible message through the industry, but also to the consumers. And via this effective communication, I believe this is how we will be able to pave the way to circularity. And if we talk about harmonization first in Europe, of course, the PPWR is here to help. But I would like to say that currently RecyClass is already having great support from several EPRs representing different countries. They are in particular Sweden, Norway, Turkey, and Belgium. But I can tell you also that more will follow. And what is interesting is that because EPR fees, or let's say eco-modulations, will then need to be harmonized according to the PPWR. This is something already that there we can foresee with RecyClass, as different EPRs are using the same recommendations that are ours. But it's true that if we talk about the global scale, as there are major global players there, it's important also to highlight the collaboration that RecyClass has with the Association of Plastic Recyclers representing North America there. The idea is to close the gap between our guidelines and our evaluation protocols. So this is a collaboration that is already more than 1 year old, with a lot of interesting progress and more to come. So the idea at the end is, of course, to try to get packaging defined as recyclable on both continents at the same time.
I totally agree with you, Jean-Emile, and this question of harmonization, of working across different geographies, understanding a consistent science-based approach, that's really important for us. And we already know that some of our team are working across different countries in Southeast Asia, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and China, for example, where we're developing standards at the moment. So this is a really important development phase. But it's true also that PPWR is definitely leading the way in setting the frame.
Yeah, clear. Well, PPWR will clearly be the new license to operate, and it is crucial to prepare by adopting the best practices that we discussed earlier.
Absolutely, and I think just it's really important that all of us who are participating in this call understand the different elements that we're going to have in our toolbox to define the future of our packaging designs and make the choices of our labels, at least for us. And whether that's down to the matching the label with the packaging type, meeting the requirements of the Design for Recycling guidelines. It's about certifications, it's about audits, it's about EPR fees, it's plastics taxes. And let's not forget that in some countries we're already seeing carbon taxes coming up. So all of these are going to come into play, and over the next 2 or 3 years we're going to have to take all of these elements into planning, let's say.
Right. Okay.
Oh, hey, there's one other thing, and I almost forgot. This landscape that we have here is actually an ideal opportunity for those of us who can innovate and bring the new solutions to market. I think that's really important as well. So, and of course, we have a couple that we want to show today.
We do so indeed, and I'm happy to bring a couple of examples in today's sessions. And actually, both of the solutions that I'd like to bring to attention today are rooting back to design choices that align with PPWR and cater to the market demand for rigid plastic packaging. So starting with the first one that UPM Raflatac has proudly introduced just recently, Carbon Action Label, is building an answer to question how to best support circularity and decarbonization in plastic packaging with filmic label solution. Carbon Action is the biocircular PP film label made with 30% renewable content on the mass balance base. And this is the material that utilizes refined renewable waste, used cooking oil, and through that serves as an alternative to conventional fossil-based film. From performance and quality perspective, it replaces traditional options. And we have designed it to offer a lower quantified carbon footprint and compatibility with recycling. Whenever we talk about quantified carbon footprint, we mean our data-driven approach through our label life service that is externally validated by DECRA. And here, talking about the compatibility with recycling, Carbon Action is a labeling solution that meets RecyClass criteria for colored HDPE and PP recycling streams. Then, second solution that I'd like to talk about is New Wave label. It's the youngest baby in our solutions portfolio family of UPM Raflatac, and this is building a response to common question and market need for developing paper label in the rigid plastic packaging that would mean design for recycling criteria. As a result of believing in the power of questions, what if and what could be, we have, with excitement, introduced a first in the world paper label that has been certified by RecyClass for compatibility with rigid HDPE and PP packaging. Why New Wave stands out? Well, firstly, because of its compatibility that has been proven by RecyClass's test results for HDPE and PP streams, including white and transparent material, which require highest purity. And currently, New Wave label is the only solution that has reached this recognition from RecyClass across the world. So that's definitely a breaking through innovation. But the second point of uniqueness in New Wave comes from the fact that it washes off cleanly in a plain water of 40 degrees. It prevents fiber loss, and it maintains high clarity of the washing water. So as a business, we are thrilled to offer this solution to the market and continue bringing proven innovations that shape the future of packaging. In addition to these new cutting-edge two solutions that are innovative and we have just recently introduced to the market, we naturally offer a wide range of established labeling solutions that support recyclability, and here including also solutions for wash-off labels for PET recycling. Do these sound good?
Absolutely. I think they're great examples of innovations that tackle the recyclability question for different packaging types. But also, I think what's interesting as well that we also bring in the climate angle here, and we have the combination of both. And that comes, in terms of a solution, that relates back to the original ambition of the EU to drive this low carbon circular economy. So absolutely, these are great steps forward. Absolutely.
Happy to hear that, and I fully agree. We are well prepared to meet the new requirements that are being shaped. So now, I think with this we are approaching to the conclusion of our final part of the session, and it's the moment to summarize what we have discussed in this forum today. So if I wanted to formulate 3 bullet points out of the discussion, probably the first one would be that while some of the elements of the regulations are still being shaped, the direction is clear. The better we understand the legislation, the better we understand the timeline, the better we are prepared to meet the new requirements. Secondly, design for recycling. That is powerful. So stay tuned and keep up with the updates coming in this respect. We will be following them very closely and informing the value chain on the new developments. These are important because they will form concrete requirement for the performance of the packaging. And lastly, power of collaboration. So collaboration in the value chain is the key to success in navigating through the change. The tools are in place, and the certification will support verification of the performance going forward.
Yep, I agree with those takeaways. I think landscape's moving; it's moving faster. We need to, innovate more for the future, and the collaboration is key. Totally agree with you. Yeah.
All right. So with that, I believe we can move to the Q&A part of the session.
That's good.
And let's see what came through the chat. Mm-hmm. The first one looks to be a very interesting question, Bob. I think it's going to be addressed to you. I will read it loud.
Okay.
So, recycled content targets are not valid for packaging components below 5% of packaging weight. Does that mean labels will be exempt?
So, as I understand it, labels will not be exempt from this. I think the critical thing here is how the percentage targets relate to the whole package and the calculation of that going forward. So I would say labels will not be exempt, but they're part of the whole story. So that's right. How I see it. That's how I interpret that one, for sure.
Of course, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Second question that we've got here, I can see in the chart, that would be the one where I think Jean-Emile, you would be the best person to respond. How is RecyClass so confident that they are aligned with PPWR recyclability grades when they are not clearly defined on EU documents?
Yes, there I should clarify probably that I was just referring to the similarities currently on what we set as the monomaterial content and the recyclability percentage set by the PPWR. But as I mentioned, the methodology behind these different class A, B, or C still needs to be set. There, of course, RecyClass has already its own methodology that is mature and used since already several years. Then let's see what the Commission will decide, and then indeed we will see if we are, to which degree we are aligned with them.
Clear. Thank you for this answer. Next question that we have here, Bob, will mass balance be allowed in the future?
That's a great question. I think the topic of mass balance always creates a discussion point. I think the rules that will be defined in the design for recycling guidelines will set the rules around this, but I fully expect that mass balance will be part of the equation. I think, especially when we start thinking about things like chemical recycling, that's already part of the way that we work today. So I think that will be fully acceptable going forward. But let's see how the design for recycling guidelines go, but it's always a discussion topic.
Yeah, right. Okay. There is one more interesting that probably addressed to both of you. So what about the wet strength treated paper-based label? Will a specific standard for wet strength paper recyclability testing be developed?
I think I'll pass this one to Jean-Emile first.
Yeah, there I should say that, of course, evaluating the recyclability of a label is always, or can be challenging, in particular because when talking about paper, we know how difficult it can be to replicate at lab scale the friction that will be generated through an industrial process. So here, of course, we already have protocols that are available that are trying their best to replicate the industrial process. So here, what I can say is that if someone come up with an innovative solution such as this one that would like to be evaluated in order to ensure that there is no paper fiber loss or that the labels is fully removable, this is something that RecyClass can offer through its recognized testing facilities.
All right. Thank you. Let's take another one. There is one that says, and I will take this, not sure if I understand the new wave concept. It is compatible with HDPE and PP recycling, and it washes off, so it can be removed from HDPE and PP stream. Yes, it can be removed because it's a wash-off label. New Wave is a paper label, so that's a kind of breakthrough innovation because that has never happened before, that we had a renewable sources origin label that would be compatible with the HDPE and PP stream. And it must be a wash-off solution to separate from the plastic substrate so that it does not go into the recycling stream. So what happens in the stream is that after shredding, the flakes of HDPE and PP, they float, while the label, without losing the fibers, is sinking. So therefore, it ensures the highest purity of the recyclate. I hope I answered this properly, Bob. Anything to add from you?
No, you nailed that. I'm pretty sure of that.
Okay. Good. Jean-Emile, what is the equivalent of RecyClass for fiber-based packaging? Would it be something you can answer?
No, I just know that, of course, there are other associations or organizations that are taking care of other packaging materials. So there, I cannot, let's say, guide you through to one specific partner.
Yeah. Bob, maybe you can help here?
That's the answer. I have nothing else to add there. So,
of course. Plenty of questions we do have. So, yeah, there is another one. Is there still an issue with claiming recyclability with self-adhesive labels due to glue constituents? If so, what are UPM doing to make friendlier glue so that paper labels can be claimed as being recyclable when applied to any surface?
great question, and that's exactly what the new wave innovation tries to address. You know, it's the impact of the adhesive through the recycling process. Can we separate it with the label to make sure that the recyclate is of the optimum quality to be used in the next phase? So, you know, this is at the heart of our product development going forward, and the new wave that you saw today is exactly that coming to reality.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Okay, a question, and maybe starting with a comment. Thank you for the comment that says interesting. And the question is, collection, sorting, and recycling infrastructure differs a lot in EU member countries, and there is a lack of harmonization. On which level will compliance be needed, on EU level or based to the available infrastructure and national legislation on the national markets the packaging is put on? Jean-Emile, may we start with you?
I can try. Sure. So there, first of all, I would start mentioning that in addition to the recyclability and the recycled content that will be mandatory by 2030 and beyond, there will be also the necessity to have packaging recycled at scale. And that's, I believe, by 2035, that more than 55% of recyclability at scale will need to be targeted. So there it will be for all European countries. And regarding the difference between European and national scale, there, I want to emphasize that currently in RecyClass, we have different certifications that are available. One that is called Design for Recycling, that is non-country specific, and that is here just to claim, let's say, that packaging is designed as recyclable, and that if a collection or a sorting system will be in place at national level, this packaging will be valorized and will be fitting with the closed loop application. And we have another one that is called the Recyclability rate certification, that is their country specific, taking into consideration the fact that this packaging will be actually collected and sorted. So currently we have two different options. So that depends on what you are looking for.
Thank you. Okay, shall we try to take one more? All right, timeline. So when do you think more information will be available about PPWR? Is it going to be Q4?
Yeah, I think if you remember back to the timelines that we showed earlier, Q4 is when we expect the final language versions to be signed off, and of course then the entry into force by the end of the year. So I think at that point, that's the next check for us at least, and everybody who's online. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Maybe let's take the final question. That's an interesting one. Will products produced outside of Europe and imported into Europe, will they have to comply with the PPWR?
Yes. All packaging placed on the market in the EU will have to comply.
Yeah, right.
No escape.
No escape. Clear. Okay, there are more, but I'm afraid it's going to be tight to answer all of the questions. So I propose that we close the session, and it's the time for me to say thank you to our speakers. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jean-Emile.
Thank you.
And big thank you to our audience. Thank you for joining our session and being with us today.